Colonel, it's me, Snake.
Check out those leaves falling off, Snake.
So, due to the nature of Metal Gear Solid, I'm gonna have to get political in this video. If relatively moderately central political opinions upset you, click off the video. Anyways, disclaimer over. Enjoy the video. Yeah, so fans weren't a big fan of the whole play as a twink instead of Snake thing, making Metal Gear Solid 2 extremely controversial. In other words, they just didn't see the vision yet. This meant that Kojima had to regain fan trust and play it safe for one more game, while also finding something to say in that. And balancing artistic expression and fan service is insanely hard to do, especially for a franchise as deep as Metal Gear. So, where did that leave the next game? Oh! What a fear in my heart, but you're so supreme.
I give my life.
And that's the way a soldier's supposed to think.
Think you can pull the trigger? I can't go back. I've left America behind me.
Commencing virtuous mission now.
I'm still in a dream, Snake Eater.
That's that real music, man. Come back home.
Metal Gear Solid 3. This game is fucking legendary. This is the fan favorite of the series. This is the one everyone loves. Even a lot of Kojima haters seem to like this one singular game. And while Metal Gear Solid 2 is my favorite in the whole series, there's no denying MGS3 is still incredible. And with a brand new remake of this game on the horizon, there's no better time than now to look at this absolute classic. A game that somehow got Kojima to strike lightning thrice. So what makes this game so special out of all the other ones? Well, ironically, not a whole lot for the most part. This is a much simpler game overall, but as we'll find out, that's absolutely to this game's benefit. So let's drop in and get to Tilted Towers. This is Metal Gear Solid 3.
After the end of World War II, the world was split into two, East and West. This marked the beginning of the era called the Cold War.
Our game opens on an airplane in 1964. Wait a minute, 1964? Yeah, MGS3 is a prequel now, about the origins of Big Boss. Remember him? The guy that Snake and Liquid are cloned after? Yeah, we finally get to figure out who this fucking guy is at long last. Anyway, so we're approaching the Soviet Union. Yeah, reminder, this is the 60s, during the Cold War. So pull out all your history books for this one, kids.
Wakey, 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 it's time for
The Bay of Pigs debacle.
Approaching Soviet airspace.
20 minutes to drop off.
All right. You ready to go?
We're also introduced to our main character, who's smoking a cigar and not giving a shit.
Put out that cigar. Put on your mask. Does this panty waste know what he's doing?
So either this guy's a complete badass or a complete idiot. A line that will probably be blurred throughout the game. We do, however, get the hardest cigar put out of all time, right before the massive jump out of the plane moment.
Hey, are you deaf?
He said put out the cigar and put on your mask.
Is he stupid?
You'll be falling at 130 miles per hour.
This is one for the history books. The world's first Halo jump.
Everything about this opening scene is so fucking hard. The cinematography is absolutely incredible. The pacing is just perfect. The characterization of the new Snake is just a great first impression. And the color choices, going from the industrial green to the bright yellow haze. A bright new world just outside of the ship. It's an intro so good, it really doesn't need an introduction or analysis at all.
Spread your wings
And fly. God be with you.
So we hop out of the plane into the latest Fortnite season, and that's how the game opens. Directed by Hideo Kojima, which means we immediately cut to an exposition dump. Well, actually, it's a mission briefing, which actually I do appreciate, since Metal Gear Solid 1 isolated this part into a separate part of the menu. Unfortunately, our higher up is British. Ew.
Jack, I've got some important news.
Proper British dishes, part 35.
So first, we now know who Big Boss is before he was Big Boss. And his name is apparently Jack. Hey, wait a minute, that's Raiden's name. But don't worry though, his name isn't actually Jack. That's just a small little nickname. It's actually revealed later to be John.
My name, huh? It's John Doe.
And they call you Jack for short.
You're a regular Captain Nemo.
Except John Doe isn't a real name you use. Rather, it's a name for unidentified dead bodies or anonymity. Very interesting. So, a short answer, this guy's name is John, or Jack for short. And more importantly, John is sent on a mission to save a guy named Sokolov. And this guy is the real fucking deal, helping out with the very first spacecraft and landing as the head of an entire military design bureau. That is, until he went all Oppenheimer.
I regret everything I've done.
I don't believe in human rights.
And hopped him and his family over to the US of A. Unfortunately, not only did Sokolov himself end up getting stuck and exhausted and put in a hospital in West Berlin, but a week later, while he's still in the hospital, the Cuban Missile Crisis happened.
The Cuban Missile Crisis.
Cuban Missile Crisis!
And the Soviets are all like,
Ayokode we want Sokolov. Give Sokolov or else we will cause World War III.
And John F. Kennedy was all like, okay. So the US gave Sokolov back to the Russians, even if it was kind of against his will.
Sokolov kept on screaming, "Save me," until he disappeared from my sight.
But the question is, why did the Russians want Sokolov? Well, to build a new nuclear device, of course. I wonder what that kind of device could be. So our plan, of course, is to infiltrate and save Sokolov and bring him back to the good old US of A.
It's the 4th of July. Yeah, we know it's true. The colors of the flag are red, white, and blue.
So we drop in by parachute and land like a goddamn badass. Hell yes, brother. But first, of course, a codec call.
Do you copy?
Right now, we're balls deep in enemy territory. So first order of business, get some code names. I wonder what our code name's gonna be.
Your code name for this mission will be Naked Snake. I'll be referring to you as Snake from now on.
Snake?
Okay, so we get the origins of the Snake name. Alright. And we're being led by Major Zero, who will be our Colonel Campbell for the whole game, and who also has a little nickname of his own.
What about you, Major? What should I call you?
Let's see. I'll be Tom. Call me Major Tom.
I wonder if that's a reference to something Kojima likes. We're also part of the Fox unit. Oh, shit. So the precursor to Foxhound. All right. We also lost our backpack in a tree. So now we gotta retrieve it, and we're given a brief taste of the controls of this game. A taste that lasts about, like 5 seconds before the next codec call cutscene. Anyway, so we get our backpack and get a new codec call. And we get the whole yada yada, this is a stealth mission shit. You know the drill by now. But we also get 2 new character introductions. Our first character is a paramedic.
Hello, Snake. I'm paramedic. Nice to meet you.
Paramedic.
As in a medic who comes in by parachute.
She's gonna save our game. And don't worry, she's way less annoying than Rose is. In fact, she's actually really adorable, as every time you save with her, she brings up some movie from that time period.
Hey, Snake, you ever heard of Godzilla, King of Monsters?
No, what is it?
It's a movie. You haven't seen it? Snake, have you heard of It Came from Outer Space?
Yeah, you told me already.
I like to imagine Kojima just kicking his legs up and giggling while writing her dialogue, including when he writes lines like these.
No, really. And someday they might make movies where you control the characters yourself.
Sounds like magic.
It'll happen. Make sure you stay alive to see it, Snake.
We're also introduced to somebody else that'll be important in the game.
There's one more person I want to introduce you to, Snake. A legendary soldier and your mentor.
Jack, is that you? How many years has it been?
Boss?
This is the boss. Remember her. She is ultra important. I mean, for one thing, she's a fucking legend. Being the leader of the Cobra unit, an entire unit of soldiers that brought World War II to an end. You know, just killing Hitler with the girlies. But she's also personally important to Snake.
Talk to me. Let me hear your voice.
It's been 5 years, 72 days, and 18 hours.
The boss is a mother figure to Snake, but someone who had to leave on a top secret mission. Something that Snake clearly resents.
Why'd you disappear on me all of a sudden?
I was on a top secret mission. You didn't need me anymore.
But there were still so many things I wanted you to teach me.
A lot of the scene is establishing Snake and the boss's relationship, as well as how much of a motherly teacher the boss is to Snake. And in my opinion, it's a really great setup. Not only are these already pretty interesting characters, but it also establishes that this new Snake is much more naive than the Solid Snake we used to know. Someone who's much more inexperienced and insecure about it, as opposed to how get it done Solid Snake was. It also shows just how damn good of a teacher the boss is.
I taught you everything you needed to know about fighting techniques. The rest you needed to learn on your own.
Techniques, sure. But what about how to think like a soldier?
How to think like a soldier? I can't teach you that. Listen to me, Jack. Just because soldiers are on the same side right now doesn't mean they always will be. Having personal feelings about your comrades is one of the worst sins you can commit. Politics determine who you face on the battlefield. And politics are a living thing. They change along with the times. Yesterday's good might be tomorrow's evil.
I do whatever I have to get the job done. I don't think about politics.
That's not the same thing. Sooner or later, your conscience is going to bother you. In the end, you have to choose whether you're going to live as a soldier or just another man with a gun.
There are a few interesting things thrown around here, especially the boss's views on morality and politics. How what we view as good changes with the times, and what that means for our personal feelings. It's just a really interesting discussion, even if it is, kinda long.
There's a saying in the Orient, loyalty to the end. Do you know what it means?
Being patriotic.
It means devoting yourself to your country. The president and the top brass won't be there forever. Once their terms are up, others will take their place.
I think my only problem is that a lot of it is in a codec call. I would have liked maybe an added scene or two where Snake and the boss physically interact. But hey, we got a whole ass game ahead of us here. So let's finish this up and keep moving.
All right, but do me a favor.
What is it?
Call me Snake.
Snake. Oh, right. Your code name is Snake. It suits you well.
Anyways, enough yapping. We gotta save Sokolov. And by doing so, we commence the virtuous mission.
Commencing virtuous mission now.
And now at long last, it's time for real, actual gameplay. Gameplay within this lush, tropical, atmospheric jungle. Ah, yes, the wild jungles of Soviet Russia. Now, fun fact, there are no tropical jungles anywhere in Russia. So why does no one have a problem with this? Well, for one thing, because the Metal Gear series has done legitimately crazier things. And for another, the gameplay is just so damn good. It embraces the idea of surviving in the jungle so well. You can kill and hunt for any animal you see, which you will need to do to maintain your stamina. You can equip camouflage to blend into your surroundings. You can hold enemies at knife point and interrogate them for more information. You can use environmental objects like beehives to scare away enemies, which, by the way, in the cutscene teaching you this, shows Snake just smiling like a goofball. You can fake your death in the game? Yeah, really. But you also have to maintain your body from broken bones and bullet wounds. And these levels have a bit more open, tactical verticality to them, which allows for by far the best level design in the series up to this point. It's like you're playing as a mix of Jason Bourne and Bear Grylls. It might be a little clunky now, but that's only because so many games after ripped it off. If this video weren't primarily about Metal Gear Solid 3's story, I'd be here for hours about the gameplay alone. And it makes you really ignore the fact that there, again, are no jungles in Russia. The gameplay is so good at depending on survival that you just kind of run with the whole thing. By the way, the soundtrack, goated. It is the best in the series. I mean, just take a fucking listen. Thank God for the Shrek composer. He cooked here. Anyway, so we arrive at where Sokolov is being held up. So we sneak inside this dingy-ass abandoned factory. And we see him burning some kind of documents. We then confront him and explain our role, which is, of course, we're here to escort him out of this place. He also, however, warns us of our lead, a bad guy who's after him.
You have to get me out of here before they arrive.
Who's they?
Ah, come on. Metal Gear went woke.
Colonel Volgin of GRU. You in the West know him as Thunderbolt.
And this guy means some serious business. So currently, Khrushchev, who is a real person by the way, is kinda fallen off due to both food shortages and the JFK assassination. Because of this, a bunch of extremists ran by Colonel Volgin are trying to take the power back and overthrow the Soviet Union. And Colonel Volgin's cherry on top is Sokolov's secret weapon he's been developing. A weapon he fully intends on using. I wonder what weapon that could possibly be. So we gotta get Sokolov out of here before Volgin arrives.
You must get me out of here before then.
Leave it to me.
So we escort Sokolov out while he does whatever this is. That is until we're ambushed by a bunch of Soviet soldiers. That is until they're ambushed by someone else. A major for the GRU's Ocelot unit.
He's the Ocelot commander.
Ha! That's Major Ocelot to you. Don't you forget it.
Yep, that's right. It's a pre-Revolver Ocelot. Voiced by Josh Keaton, aka my favorite Spider-Man voice ever. Anyway, so obviously he's after Sokolov too, meaning that Ocelot's here to have a nice conversation with the Soviets. I mean, just check out these people skills. Hey, that's a pretty good point, actually! He then approaches us and it does that. I guess this means Ocelot's a certified cat boy.
I really wish I didn't see that. Try to erase my memory. Alright, it's gone now.
Causing the whole Ocelot unit to come out.
Crew operative!
All the while, Ocelot taunts us.
What is that stance? Huh. That gun.
That ain't no grill walk.
That is until it's revealed that Ocelot is a complete dumbass, as his gun suddenly jams on him, allowing Sokolov to just run away, initiating an amazingly choreographed fight scene. Which, on that note, the game's choreography and its cutscenes is at peak here. There's so much more style and weight to it all, and even some well-timed slow-mo for that extra impact. It all just looks so damn cool. It's still in line with the over-the-top Metal Gear nature, but it feels so much more refined here. Even compared to MGS2, the composition is a whole different level here. It's like Kojima always wanted to make scenes like this, but couldn't due to one reason or another. It's all a very long way for me to say, this shit looks dope as hell. So after all this, Snake gives young Ocelot a bit of advice, even though he just tried to kill him. You know what? What a nice guy, you know?
You tend to twist your elbow to absorb the recoil. That's more of a revolver technique, but that was some fancy shooting. You're pretty good.
Pretty good.
So after beating the fuck out of Ocelot, it's time to find Sokolov again. And good news, we find him, but we find something else in the distance.
That's what they were making you build.
Yes, the Shagohod, the treading behemoth.
Yup, of course, it's not Metal Gear actually, but it is a giant nuclear tank called the Shagohod. So effectively, yeah, this is our Metal Gear of the game. The giant evil top secret weapon project that you have to take down. But this time it's in the context of the Cold War and the fear of nuclear war, which of course means the Shagohod means one giant thing.
If it is completed and the Colonel gets his hands on it, it will mean the end of the Cold War.
The end of the Cold War.
And then the Age of Fear will truly begin.
A world war.
Well, shit, World War III isn't good. Well, but thank God we're at least bringing Sokolov back home then. So we cross this bridge back home, except someone confronts us.
Boss?
Yeah, shit, the boss is here. And with the way she just drops whatever's in her hand so carelessly, she clearly isn't here to aid us either.
And clearly, not for shawarma.
So Snake asks what the hell is going on here, and turns out she's here to take Sokolov from us. We're then suddenly attacked by a bunch of hornets, resulting in Sokolov getting kidnapped into a helicopter right above us. By the way, yes, there is a guy who can control hornets in the game, but we'll discuss him and the old man with googly eyes later in the game. Oh, and the ghost too. Yes, there's a ghost in Metal Gear, but again, that's not important right now. No, right now the important thing is the lightning dude.
Kuwabara, Kuwabara.
This is Colonel Volgin, a man who is comically evil. He's not the deepest Metal Gear villain, but he is a lot of fun to be around. But for some reason, the boss is on his side now, giving him access to nuclear warheads.
Boss, what is this?
I'm defecting to the Soviet Union.
No! 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 Fuck! Shit!
Yeah, the boss is now defecting, which is clearly, not good.
If somebody tells you
I'm defecting to the Soviet Union,
that is communism.
So clearly right now, Snake's a little confused and conflicted, allowing the boss to take down Snake and break his fucking arm. The boss then spares him, or so Snake thinks, because she then throws him off this giant bridge.
drift away. My place is with them now.
Yeah, so for now, who knows what the fuck's going on? Aside from, of course, our mother figure apparently being a dirty commie.
Hey, next week they'll be telling you can't drink a Coca-Cola. What is that? That's communism.
Thankfully, though, a barely conscious and beat the fuck up Snake is still alive, allowing him to go into the cure menu and heal himself, as well as call the rest of the crew. And man, you can even hear the personal devastation in his voice.
Major, the boss, She's defected.
Goddamn, poor guy. He's gonna have some real mommy issues after this one. I mean, hell, just look at how battered and bruised he is. He'll be listening to Good Boy ASMRs in no time. He then looks up and sees the Shagohod being transported by the bad guy. But the boss is still looking out, reaching out her hand to him, and Snake reaches out back. So for some reason, she still seems to care about him.
You don't find that suspicious?
Meanwhile, though, Volgin is looking over his new nuclear toys. His brand new handheld nuclear missile, which he just decides to launch at Sokolov's research base, knowing that the boss will be blamed for it, even if he just kills random Russians in the process.
Colonel, even if they are our enemies, they're still our countrymen.
But it won't be me that pulled the trigger. It'll be our friend, the American defector.
This song is a war crime.
I gotta say, I love how non-complicatedly evil Volgin is. Like, actual cartoon villain type shit. If I can get a little ahead of myself, this guy is just the bad guy. Nothing more and nothing less. Unlike Liquid and Solidus, there's no attempt to make this guy sympathetic at all. He's just a massive warmongering asshole. He's a weirdly one-dimensional character done extremely well. And ironically, a really enjoyable breath of fresh air. Anyways, Volgin then launches the nuke and destroys the research facility. Just close enough to Snake for him to feel the devastating impact. This massive moment fades to black and we get our intro sequence. I mean, what is there to say about Snake Eater that hasn't been said already? The whole thing is obviously a James Bond title sequence, complete with images of at-the-time current events and nuclear imagery. And visuals alone, this all just sets the stage perfectly. But what I really want to talk about is the song itself.
What a thrill, with darkness and silence through the night.
Yeah, there is some serious musical genetic makeup here, especially if you heard the Goldfinger theme before.
Snake Eater, he's the man with a Midas touch, with darkness and silence through the night. Golden words you would pour in your heart, but his eyes get the skies what you feel. Someday you go through the rain, and someday you feed on a tree frog.
Now, of course, both of these songs are absolute bangers, but, and I may be biased here, Snake Eater is just on a whole nother level. That sexy guitar mixed with a crescendo of horns and trumpets, the background vocals repeating along with Cynthia Harrell's beautiful vocals. I have no clue who this woman is, but man, she just eats this song up.
Crime, it's the way I fly to you.
It's just a great way of further setting up the time period, as well as immediately linking this game to 60s era Bond, and carrying forward the suspension of that last scene. By the way, keep Bond in mind because we'll be getting back to him a lot. But all I want to say for now is Snake Eater is a fucking banger. A fact that needs no more analysis at all.
I'm still in a dream, Snake Eater.
Fade in 1 week later, where we're also given a second mission briefing. A briefing that includes this line.
Does this mean Fox is going to die?
No. This fox is still one step ahead of the hound.
Very subtle, Kojima. So basically right now the US is kinda fucked. As you know, the bad guy fired a nuke, and Russia thinks it was the US that did it. Which of course we know wasn't the case. It's something we see President Lyndon B. Johnson discuss with Khrushchev. On that note, by the way, it's really funny hearing Lyndon B. Johnson talk about Metal Gear lore. It's kind of the same feeling as hearing your dad talk about, like, Kingdom Hearts lore or something.
Her name is the Boss. She's a living legend.
Linkara, the great Linkara, he did.
But yeah, Russia thinks the US launched a nuke at them. And due to some tricky political reasons, Lyndon B. Johnson won't be able to convince them alone.
I've said it once and I'll say it again. Our government had nothing to do with it.
And I would like dearly to believe you. However, I'm afraid my power over the military has weakened since the Cuban incident. I will need some kind of proof that this was not the action of the American government.
So, yeah, you heard the man. We need proof, and we have 1 week to do it. And if we don't, there will be a whole-ass nuclear world war. Sadly, the last resort we have is to kill the boss to prove our innocence. So like it or not, Snake has to kill his mother figure and mentor. This is on top of the whole Sokolov and Shagohod thing, by the way. So, you know, no pressure.
Eliminate the boss.
Might run off the road and kill myself.
Good news, though, since we are killing the boss, Russia is helping us out a little bit, giving us contact with Adam and Eva, 2 KGB spies who will help us out in this mission. So we land where we started and call Major Tom again. Except he's not called Major Tom anymore because he miswatched a movie. That movie, funny enough, being The Great Escape from 1963. And not only is this a reference to one of the best films ever made, that way Kojima gets an excuse to talk about movies in his video game, but it's also a really cool shout out as The Great Escape directly inspired the very first Metal Gear game. Anyways, our Major tells us to call him Zero from now on.
You know, let's just use Zero, like we've been doing all along.
All right then. Major Zero it is.
Furthermore, paramedics back, and we even got a new member on our team. That guy being our weapons specialist, Sagan.
Yo! You're Snake, aren't you?
Now this guy is not really important to the plot at all. At least, not in this game. Because you see, we've already met this guy before. It isn't revealed until MGS4, so spoiler alert. But remember the DARPA chief from Metal Gear Solid 1? Yeah, that's the same character. That's Sagan. And honestly, he's kind of a cool fucking dude in this game, giving us plenty of insight on weapons and electronics in our equipment. He also believes the upcoming digital age could unite the world together, which I think is a very interesting character motivation.
I don't think racism's gonna go away even in the 21st century. But I want to work with computers and use them to bring people closer together. In the digital world, it doesn't matter whether you're black or white, American or Russian or whatever. Everybody's going to be the same. That's what I think.
Well, sadly, I got bad news for him. But hey, 60 years of hindsight is 2020.
Wearing black face paint, huh?
And of course, he'd eventually join DARPA and help build Metal Gear Rex. Well, you know what, Donald? You get that motherfucking bag, my broski. Even if it means dying in a random cell in Alaska. But he is a really fun character in this game, even if he doesn't do a whole lot.
Snake, what's up? Why are you naked? I know there's a naked option under uniform that lets you take off the upper part of your uniform.
Is there a way to take off my pants?
Say what?
My pants, can I?
Oh, hell no. This Fox unit is a nutfest.
But enough talk. Now it's time to find Adam, who should be at that one abandoned factory we were at earlier in the game, who we can identify with a very special phrase and password.
The password is, "Who are the Patriots?" and "Lali Lulela."
Oh, shit.
This mission will be codenamed Operation Snake Eater.
Understood. Commencing Operation Snake Eater.
Well, you heard the men. Commencing Operation Snake Eater. Except on the way, we hear the noise of a horse. Hey, don't worry, guys, it's just Twilight Sparkle. Actually, though, oh shit, it's the boss. And she's not here to be friendly.
Boss.
That arm still hurt?
What are you doing here?
Go home.
Snake, still hella confused, tries to fight back, only for the boss to kick his ass and degrade him.
You don't have a prayer of finishing your mission. You're not even armed.
Boss!
I'm not your boss anymore.
She then causes an explosion, which will no doubt draw guards to us. But through all this, you can tell that Snake at least wants some kind of answer. And when he tries to ask, he's met with a very interesting answer.
Why'd you defect?
I didn't.
But you did though, stupid. She also challenges Snake's definition of loyalty.
I'm loyal to the end, to my purpose. What about you, Jack? What's it going to be? Loyalty to your country or loyalty to me? Your country or your old mentor? The mission or your beliefs? Your duty to your unit or your personal feelings? You don't know the truth yet. But sooner or later, you'll have to choose.
These are all thematically really interesting. Too bad we don't know what the fuck she's talking about yet. Clearly, something weird's going on here. And there's more to the boss than meets the eye. But she is set up to be a goddamn force of nature. One with very obviously unclear motives.
I don't expect you to forgive me. But you can't defeat me either. Just look at that bandana. If you can't put the past behind you, you won't survive long. If we meet again, I'll kill you.
The boss then leaves, leaving us completely weaponless.
Which is not good.
We make it back down to the factory, where we suddenly encounter the bright lights of someone. A mysterious woman who isn't Adam.
Are you Adam? I thought you were supposed to be a man.
Adam couldn't make it.
She also does not answer our password, which is a little sus, but she does save us from getting ambushed by doing epic gamer shooting moves. What also helps is that Eva is a smoking hottie. Ooh la la. And she's here with two very important things to show Snake. And yes, you can press the RB button to look at her eyes.
What is she done to you?
Now listen up here, because believe it or not, there actually is something intentional being done here. So, as you can maybe tell, Metal Gear Solid 3 is Kojima's attempt at a James Bond movie. From the groovy soundtrack to the Snake Eater song, even down to the similar characters and tropes, there are a lot of James Bond echoes in this game. But that's because this game is, in actuality, a deconstruction of James Bond, as well as a deconstruction of the male power fantasy. Like, think about James Bond, right? He's suave, sexy, cunning, gets a bunch of gadgets, and has Sigma riz. Rewatching Goldfinger is kind of funny, but also a little creepy nowadays, because every woman in this movie is literally just a sex object. One that the Sigma Alpha Rizzler James Bond seems to always get with. I forgot you were a man for a moment, so it was strange to me when you said it, that casually misogynistic remark.
Last night I bought a burger your sister.
In Metal Gear Solid 3, though, Kojima goes, okay, what if we don't do that? And nowhere is this more apparent than with the characters of Snake and Eva. Because in their actual dialogue together, Big Boss is way more awkward than usual. And this is contrasted with the character of Eva, who, as, you know, scandalous as she is shockingly really dominant as a character. One of the first things she does in this very next scene is try and seduce Snake by sitting next to him in a bed.
You know that literally means having S-E-X.
Now already this is interesting, as in James Bond, it's the man who makes the first move. So already MGS3 is playing around with role reversals. But what's interesting is that Snake actually turns down Eva and just starts slowly moving away from her. He does this multiple times, by the way, throughout the game, all of which for some kind of trust or emotional reason. Something that the sex-addicted Bond would absolutely not do. It also helps that just in general, Snake and Eva's chemistry is already really good.
You held it sideways and used the muzzle jump to create a horizontal sweep. That was impressive.
Bet you've never seen that technique in the West.
My favorite part has to be when Eva gives us a new American gun, and Snake just starts dorking out over it.
The sight system is original too. The thumb safety is extended to make it easier on the finger. A long type trigger with non-slip grooves. Where'd you get something like this?
And if you think that's dork behavior, he then starts explaining his new knife and gun technique to Eva.
And just what are you doing there?
In close-range combat, a knife can sometimes be more useful than a gun. By doing this, I'll be able to hold a knife at the same time and still keep the gun steady. That way, I can instantly switch between a gun battle and a knife fight.
The autism headcanon is real, y'all. But anyways, we learned that Adam, the informant, couldn't make it. So in his place, we get to spend the night with Eva.
I'll stand watch until dawn. Now be a good boy and lie down.
Yeah, Kojima? Snake then wakes up to, yeah, of course.
Oh, titas! Titas, titas, tita.
Bad news though, the Ocelot unit is ambushing us, and it's our job to play the game and take him down. That is until Ocelot holds Eva hostage. Check out that bullet chain, by the way. God damn, that's drip. Speaking of guns though, turns out he has a revolver this time. With that being said, Snake is still calling him a dumbass.
It's a nice gun, I'll give you that. But the engraving gives you no tactical advantage whatsoever. And you're forgetting one more very basic thing. You don't have what it takes to kill me.
Conveniently though, Ocelot runs out of bullets, giving Eva the perfect chance to escape. She also does a wheelie backflip on Ocelot. I don't know how that's possible. Long story short, Snake ends up letting Ocelot go.
Don't.
Why?
He's still young.
Eva then leaves, and it's high time that we do too. We do get a call from Eva, however. Now, reminder, Eva is a Russian defect, meaning she used to work for the good old US of A before converting over to the Soviet Union. Now, if you know your history, you might be asking, why would anyone do this? Especially considering that Eva is literally born and raised in America. And in the context of the boss also defecting, Snake asks Eva this question. This is where we then get Eva's answer.
Why would anyone want to defect? Betraying your country like that, I just don't get it. What was it that made you want to change sides?
You wouldn't believe me if I told you.
Try me.
I saw the universe. People and countries are both changed by their environment and by the times. There's a world of difference between this country and America. But it's only a difference of position, a difference of perspective.
Now this is something we can actually kind of analyze here. We of course won't get the full picture quite yet, but we're certainly on the pathway there. Now reminder, back when I analyzed MGS2, a game all about information and the control of it, I mentioned how back in the day, including the 60s and 70s when MGS3 would have taken place, the prominence of newspapers and televised news made information much more easy to control, meaning you could only really see one kind of perspective for any kind of ongoing conflict. A perspective that very obviously will be skewed. A lot of times you just can't take perspectives at face value, and that's the weird reason why Eva defected from America.
Coming here made me realize something. Half of what I'd been told was a complete and utter lie. The other half was a conveniently constructed lie.
Where's the truth then?
It's hidden in the lies.
This all still doesn't quite make a lot of sense, especially to our main character, Snake, but the game does seem to be foreshadowing to something much greater happening later. So for now, we'll keep hearing the game out. That being said, though, Snake does seem to be a loyal dog to the good old US of A for now.
Are you lying too?
Who knows? I've been trained to make even the most severe falsehood sound like the honest truth. Weren't you?
No. I believe because I have to.
Speaking of mission, we got a whole ass game to play still. Right on time too, because we get to Ocelot again. This time with the 2 new revolvers, man, he gets these fast.
12 shots.
We then get our first real boss of the game, and goddamn, what a good one. Metal Gear Solid 3 has my favorite bosses of all time in any game, and Revolver Ocelot is the perfect introduction. It's literally a canyon gunfight, and it's intense as hell. You gotta hide behind rocks, shoot down a beehive, you have to flake and outsmart him, and it's really tough and really fun. There's even Metal Gear Solid 1 callbacks, or the call forwards, I guess.
I love to reload during a battle. There's nothing like the feeling of slamming a long silver bullet into a well-placed cheek.
I've never felt a tension like this before. That's so different from simply changing a clip.
Well then, however, interrupted by a bunch of hornets, causing Ocelot to run off. Well, meanwhile, Snake is forced to jump down to the cavern, leading us down to a dark, dingy cave. A cave we spend way too much time trying to find our way out of.
You know when you... and it's like... you live?
That is until we reach our next boss area and fight the first member of the Cobra unit, who is indeed the guy behind all those hornets.
I am the pain.
This guy's whole thing is just he controls bees. Now here's something you'll notice throughout the game. The Cobra unit, for the most part, is pretty one-dimensional and one-note, which is in a pretty stark contrast to Foxhound and Dead Cell. This is not a bad thing though. If anything, it fits the setting. Again, harkening back to the goofier villains of older James Bond movies, which is really interesting. You would think that giving the villains less character would be a backstep, but in execution, it's weirdly the opposite. It fits the setting and tone so well. And as we'll see much later, it fits the story and themes too. And by the way, yes, this boss fight's amazing too. If not really easy, you dive in the water, you pop back out, throw grenades, and shoot the guy when he's vulnerable. But we got a lot of time ahead of us, so long story short, we beat the pain.
The pain. The pain. The pain.
Man, if only being an exterminator was that easy. We then head out the cave and see some of the flying machines in the 1970s. Look, man, it's a Metal Gear Solid game, don't question it. Where we arrive at this giant warehouse, where we catch Sokolov being taken hostage, and we also catch his lover, Tatiana, who is, by the way, just Eva in a clever disguise. Volgan's also here too, torturing her. Great. So is Ocelot, who also starts torturing Sokolov, but this time by Russian roulette juggling 3 revolvers.
One of these 3 guns has a single bullet in it.
That's really over the top, but it is a pretty badass, intense scene. That is until the boss suddenly interrupts him.
There's no such thing as luck on the battlefield. You'd better stay in line from now on.
Sokolov is then taken inside and Ocelot follows them. Meanwhile, the boss tells Volgan about the pain.
The pain is dead.
What?
This mildly disappoints Volgan. The boss, however, reassures Volgan that they'll be able to kill us.
They? Yeah, them.
They, of course, being our next 2 Cobra unit members.
They'll be able to handle it.
This guy is the End. And right behind him is the Fear, who the boss sends after us. All of the End is just a little bit eaten.
The End is saving what life he has left in him for battle. Normally, he's dead. But he'll wake up when the time is right. And when he does, it will be the end. for the boy.
Volgin and not Eva then go inside. All while it suddenly rains and the boss begins talking to someone.
Desaro, is that you?
But as the boss goes back inside, we cut back to gameplay. A quick side note, by the way, you can grab a sniper rifle early up this area here. And if you got it right before the cutscene that we just talked about, and you aim it just right, you can actually kill the end, like right now, skipping his entire boss fight. That's actually kind of insane. But we aren't gonna do that though. Rather, we're gonna go into this laboratory area here. And with our clever scientist disguise, we're gonna go look for Sokolov. Sadly though, he isn't in this area.
If you're looking for Sokolov, he's not here anymore.
We do, however, find a drunk Russian guy, who is in fact the head of this design bureau. And apparently he's a massive Zone of the Enders fan. Apparently this guy is 37 years ahead of his time. Also, he's really jealous of Sokolov's tank design, which is why he's getting real plastered right now.
Because of him, I have been stripped of my authority. My research has come to nothing. The philosopher's legacy has been handed over to him.
Wait, the philosopher's legacy? What the hell is that? That's a new one. Well, sadly, we don't quite get a clear answer of who the philosophers or what their legacy is. But we do learn that Big Boss is a dumbass.
Look at these.
Nice shoes.
Now, ironically, this guy's important in the long term, as he has plans for a giant bipedal tank design. Wait a minute, bipedal tank, is that a—
This technology will be the missing link between infantry and artillery. A kind of metal gear, if you will.
Metal gear?
Yeah, turns out this is the guy who came up with the idea of Metal Gear. And to top that one off, he's sending the documents to a guy named Huey Emmerich, who is, you know, Otacon's dad. We do, however, find out where Sokolov and the Shagohod are.
The great fortress of Grozny Grad.
Alright, great, that's where we're going, right? Except that's not the smartest idea.
Are you mad? It's an impenetrable fortress.
I'm sure it is.
Our drunk friend, however, offers to help us get in, all because Snake complimented his shoes earlier. So he tells us the best way to sneak into Grozny Grad, and we're on our way now. All without getting caught whatsoever, except suddenly we're cut short by—
I am the fear.
This dude's like a freaky version of Spider-Man. He's double jointed in his elbows, he's extremely agile, and has stealth camouflage in the 60s. He also has a poison dart, which, by the way, in real life, the poison gives you a massively painful boner. What did Kojima mean by this?
Where does Hideo Kojima get his ideas?
That throat is coated in the venom of the Brazilian wandering spider.
Now, this is a wandering spider, and particularly dangerous for men, because in some cases, men develop a very long-lasting and extremely painful and dangerous erection when they're bitten by this spider.
I need to be bit.
Now, you could fight the fear the normal way by, you know, playing the game. Or you can fake your death, wait for the fear to come down and turn around, and then revive yourself, take a torch you found in the cave, and just crouch down and burn the dude. This is no joke, actually an option.
The fear! The fear! I see it! The fear!
Well, that's over now. Let's keep moving. Except Eva then hits us up. And turns out to get into Grozny Grad, we need a key. And thankfully, though, Eva has one, so we'll meet with her first. Except just one more problem.
I heard that one of the Cobras is waiting for you in the jungle at the foot of the mountains. He's a legendary sniper called The End.
Well, there we have it. The End is up next. He's the quote-unquote father of modern sniping, and is in fact over 100 years old, and can apparently bulge his eyes out of his sockets like a cartoon character. But as goofy as this all is, he's really built up to be this genuine threat, this mythological legend that we have to take down. I can't lie though, I adore the way his dialogue is written.
I beg of you, grant me the strength to take this final prey. Let me linger in this world just a little longer.
His monologue is absolute poetry. This man is dangerous, but also on his last leg. You feel his gravity, his finality, his gratefulness, his spirituality and connection with nature. This boss is weirdly beautifully written, and he's the perfect symbol for a kind of complete otherworldly oblivion.
I have to thank you for waking me. If you hadn't shown up, my sleep would have been eternal. Do you hear me, Snake? I am the end. I am here to send you to your ultimate fate. You'll make a fine quarry for my final hunt.
And furthermore, the actual boss fight fully lives up to his intimidation. You're put into this large open area, and you have to snipe, flank, and outsmart the End, who is both, again, a master sniper and a master of camouflage. Because of both this and the wide open areas, this boss intentionally takes a really long time to beat, which is good since it is also really intense, as his presence can be felt everywhere in this area. Fun fact, by the way, Kojima originally wanted this boss fight to take a real-life week to beat, and I'm gonna be so real, thank God that didn't happen. But anyways, we beat the End, and we get one more ending monologue.
Spirits of the forest, I thank you. The boss would be proud of you. The time has come for a younger generation to rise. I've been wandering for more than a century, and now my journey comes to a close. What a splendid way to end it all. I have no regrets.
Of course, though, it wouldn't be a Metal Gear game without some goofy shit. In this case, his dentures popping out.
I can return to the form of Allah.
By the way, you can also defeat this boss by just waiting a real-life week, because if you do, he will die of old age. It's funny how this boss can be skipped by killing him early and or just waiting a week. That being said, this is legitimately one of the best bosses in the series, so I do genuinely think you missed something on your first playthrough by going the easy way out. But hey, who am I to judge how you play a video game? Most of you won't even play these games. You'll just watch this video on YouTube. I know who you are. But now, at long last, we make it to this tunnel, and we finally make it to the ladder.
What a thrill, with darkness and silence through the night.
So as you can tell, the whole scene is just Snake climbing a ladder while the Snake Eater vocal track plays. This is one of the most famous parts of the game, mostly because it is just a massive meme. But after the intensity of the end boss fight, this is actually a pretty nice pace breaker. Also nice that it's also the literal halfway point of the game, so it serves as an intermission of sorts. Although it is a very creative intermission, I guess. But you know what? It's weird, it's stupid, I love it, and I wouldn't change a single thing about it.
I'm still in a dream, Snake Eater.
So we arrive at these massive but heavily guarded mountaintops. This is where we rendezvous with, of course.
Ooh la la. Ooh la la. Ooh la la.
So we get more Snake and Eva development, where we find out that Volgan likes beating women.
Where'd you get those cuts?
The Colonel, this is his hobby. He's a sadist. He gets pleasure out of making people suffer.
I mean, this guy was a real jerk.
Snake, however, pushes her off like a real Sigma male would.
I'm the same way. Scars all over.
Can I see?
No.
Eva then gives us the underground key to Grozny Grad, but tells us we'll also need a disguise. The disguise, of course, being Raiden. Well, actually, this guy's name is Rykov, but that doesn't matter as this is indeed an MGS2 jab. Reminder, MGS2 was a controversial game when it came out, and a lot of people just really hated Raiden.
Here's another reason Metal Gear Solid 2 fails.
So, Metal Gear Solid 3 is kind of a course correction, a return to form of sorts, which of course means plenty of moments to insult Metal Gear Solid 2 every which way. Of course, as they say, our enemies change with the times, and so did Metal Gear Solid 2's reception. And nowadays, everyone loves Metal Gear Solid 2, meaning these jokes kind of aged like shit. Of course, we'll fully meet back with the character of Rykov later, but for now, let's cut back to Snake and Eva, because Eva right here asks about the boss and Snake's relationship, something Snake finally opens up about.
What's the story between you and the boss?
She was like a mother. and my master.
Now this scene does two things really well at the exact same time. For one thing, it dives into Snake's thoughts on the boss, someone he loved on a level that he can't quite understand or describe. And we get some insights into how conflicted he is about killing her, because when Eva asks him if he thinks he can kill her, Snake just kind of walks around, not giving any sort of answer. The truth is, he doesn't know himself. He's simply following the mission orders he's been given, which is a direct reflection of Solid Snake's character arc.
Is there anyone you like?
I've never been interested in anyone else's life.
Snake? Is there anyone you like? Someone special?
I've never been interested in other people's lives.
What makes this conversation even more interesting, though, is Eva. Snake describes the boss in a deeply, deeply platonic way. Eva, however, keeps redirecting the whole conversation back to romantic love.
And your lover?
It went deeper than that.
Do you love her?
No, nothing like that.
Do you hate her?
Does it have to be one or the other? Love or hate?
Between a man and a woman? You bet.
So at this point, it's clear the scene is also trying to deconstruct the whole James Bond relationship again. This time, contrasting the highly sexualized femme fatale Eva against Snake's own views of the boss, which are platonic, but weirdly enough, a lot deeper. Snake and Eva also just have really good chemistry in general. And again, I love how Snake isn't the one who's pursuing Eva, but rather the other way around. This is the first time Snake and Eva kiss in the game, and Snake is completely disinterested. This is something that a James Bond type power fantasy would absolutely not do, by the way, and I find that absolutely fascinating. But you are rooting for the two to actually get together because they are enjoyable together. Of course, though, maybe not now. More importantly, we gotta head to Groznygrad now. So we say goodbye to Eva and briefly cut to Volgin. Nothing much happens here except the drunk Russian guy is now dead. So let's fast forward a bit.
There is a spy among us.
Oh my god, he said among us. He said among us. Wow. So we head inside the Groznygrad underground tunnel, our one secret way into Groznygrad itself, where suddenly we're ambushed by the next Cobra unit member. This is the Fury.
I am the Fury.
Now, the Fury is actually really interesting. This guy is a former cosmonaut, and in the Metal Gear universe, the very first man to travel into space. However, when re-entering the Earth's atmosphere, his ship burned up, and he returned with severe burns all over his body. However, due to this, he no longer feels any kind of physical pain.
I came back from space. As I returned, I had one vision. The world set ablaze.
This also caused a massive obsession with fire. So he's kind of like a Firefly from Batman plus space.
And do you know what I saw there? Fury. A great and terrible fury at being alive.
Before we do anything else, though, let's defeat this guy first. And what is arguably the most frustrating boss in the whole game, but also one that's a lot like the MGS1 Vulcan Raven fight, where it's largely a cat and mouse chase around tight corridors. Only this time it's worse because this guy is a giant fire-throwing tank, whose flames reach all the way to the end of the goddamn hallway. This boss is a massive difficulty spike, and I've always had trouble on it. And with a boss like this, I'm sure he has zero weaknesses that it's the knife. His weakness is the fucking knife. I didn't know this until I went back to re-record PS2 footage. So yeah, we defeat him annoying orange style, I guess.
The memories you have and the role you were assigned are burdens you had to carry. It doesn't matter if they were real or not.
I'm off. Join the sorrow.
Now, the Fury, however, is really interesting, especially in regards to the anti-war themes of this game. He's obviously incredibly evocative of the US versus Soviet space race. You can tell because the guy is literally a cosmonaut, constantly referencing things like mission control and whatnot.
Mission control, do you read me?
Now, as we all know, the Cold War wasn't really a physical war, but it still resulted in both short-term and long-term casualties, especially in regards to the actual space race. Soyuz 11, Gemini 9A, Apollo 1, all of these were space race endeavors that led to casualties and fatalities. And in a way, for better or worse, these were people who died for the cause of their country. And it's interesting that the Fury, the emotion of anger, complete with burning pyromania and everything, is given to, of all characters, a Cold War era cosmonaut.
And do you know what I saw there? Fury. A great and terrible fury at being alive.
It's an example of the game questioning the idea of patriotism, something it's been hinting at this entire time if you couldn't tell already. If what you're doing is leading to more and more conflict, is sacrificing your life for your country worth it? I think on that note, we should also mention the Fury's final words. For context, the very first man to travel to space was Yuri Gagarin, who is in fact mentioned and quoted way earlier in the game.
The rocket that carried Yuri Gagarin to orbit was the A1.
The Earth was blue, but there was no God.
Now, whether Yuri actually said this is kind of up for debate, but this is still a quote attributed to him, so just pretend it is for now. But I do want to bring up a much different quote from Yuri. To quote Yuri upon seeing the Earth while in orbit, "I see the Earth. It is so beautiful." And it's that first sentence that the Fury ends up quoting before he dies.
I see the Earth.
Which is absolutely alluding to something. Oftentimes, real-life astronauts will see the Earth and experience a kind of perspective change. It's something called the overview effect, where they realize how interconnected yet extremely fragile the world is.
You know, and the feeling of looking back and seeing your planet as a planet.
When I looked out the window of the International Space Station, I saw the paparazzi-like flashes of lightning storms. I saw dancing curtains of auroras that seemed so close it was as if we could reach out and touch them.
It's a totally different perspective, and it makes you appreciate actually how fragile our existence is.
It's also made many astronauts realize just how much humanity has fucked over the planet. Things like social injustices, conflicts, even economic systems are all pointless in the grand scheme of things. And yet, ironically, these are the leading causes for many of humanity's greatest casualties.
It's a sense of injustice that we see when we see the sobering contradiction between the indescribable beauty of our planet and the unfortunate realities of life on our planet for a significant number of the inhabitants.
And again, throughout the game, this is something Metal Gear Solid 3 hints at all the time. But the Fury marks a giant shift into Metal Gear Solid 3's real anti-war theme. Also, he becomes a giant flaming head. I don't know why this is. But we are, however, finally in Grozny Grad, where we have to find not Raiden and steal his clothing as a disguise. Now, again, this is one big joke character making fun of Raiden, complete with the references and everything.
April 30th.
April 30th?
We'll tell them everything. Together.
We'll tell them everything together.
Today is the day I met you.
Today is the day I met you.
No, never heard the name before.
No, never heard the name before. Bruh.
And I have no idea if the joke actually aged well or not. Mostly because all the jokes involve Rykov and Volgin being gay. Everything from Rykov wearing this tight-ass Speedo to other jokes we'll get to a little later. I'm sure someone will find this kind of demeaning, but it's honestly more stupid than anything. Also, on that note, Kojima is not homophobic, as he added gay sex into Metal Gear Solid Peace Walker. What did Kojima mean by this? But anyways, we got the disguise. Okay, great. And we briefly catch Eva intimidating Sokolov, completing her Tatiana disguise, looking for whatever that philosopher's legacy thing is. Sokolov, however, knows nothing, so Eva just kind of leaves. He also gives her some small film role. Not sure what any of this means yet, but now it's our job to get Sokolov out of there. Except, bad news, the Shagohod's in phase 2 of preparation. It's also, of course, a giant nuclear missile tank, one that can go really, really fast. So it's like a giant nuclear SRT. There is, however, one way to potentially stop it, and that's by getting C3 and blowing shit up.
C3? You mean that cutting-edge plastic explosive?
Even more conveniently, Eva seems to have taken some, as well as super secret Shagohod information on that film roll she took. By the way, plot twist, Eva was not the lover of Sokolov at all. Rather, she was Volgin's lover, so she was a fucking imp. So now, we got pretty much everything to destroy the Shagohod with. Except, new problem is Sokolov is refusing to come with us. For one thing, he'll of course be hunted down in Russia, but now, for another, the whole weapons scientist guilt is getting to him.
Every day, I help create things that should never be used. Things that should never have existed in the first place.
Of course, though, wherever he goes, politicians will not have his best interests in mind. So even if he does return to his family in the US, he'll still be forced to play his Oppenheimer of the Week role. Again, we're getting more Cold War commentary here, where real human lives are simply being used as tools of conflict.
Scientists are always being used. And my creations do not even benefit mankind.
This, again, can be seen in something as seemingly simple as the space race, which Sokolov now directly criticizes if the Fury boss fight wasn't enough for you.
The space race between America and Russia became the prey of politicians. The space race and the arms race are one and the same. Missiles, rockets, what's the difference?
By the way, if all this sounds familiar, it should, because this is pretty much just Otacon's arc in MGS1, except with a lot less anime.
I became a scientist because I wanted to make robots like the ones in the Japanese animes.
All I wanted to do was build space rockets.
But this arc is also kinda deconstructed in MGS3, because when Otacon discovers he's a tool for nuclear conflict, he just kinda decides to stop developing nuclear weapons right then and there. However, Sokolov doesn't have the luxury to just throw his hands up and end his character arc there, because the US and Russia are fighting over him. He is a valuable weapons building asset. It highlights the dehumanization of a conflict. No matter what country he's in, Sokolov will not have a choice in what he actually does. So not only is MGS3 expanding upon themes set up in MGS1, but it also highlights an unfortunate reality of conflict, in which, when it comes to the choice of actually doing dirty work, you don't really get one. Suddenly, though, Volgin shows up, so Snake puts on the Rykov mask just in time.
Major, what are you doing here? I've been waiting for you in my room.
This is when Volgin grabs our balls. Man, this franchise really loves men grabbing each other's balls.
What the Sigma? What the Sigma? What the Sigma?
This is also how Volgin finds out we're not actually Rykov. He just really knows how Rykov's balls feel.
Who are you? I know the Major better than anyone else.
What do you mean by that?
So of course he threatens to kill us, while also suddenly shooting Sokolov in the leg. Snake then takes down Volgin, but only for the boss to then show up, where she effortlessly takes us down and unmasks us. She then leaves and lets Volgin kick our ass to a bloody pulp, causing Snake to then black out and wake up in a dark torture room. And for a good minute or two, this whole cutscene is just black, and the only thing you hear is Sokolov getting brutally murdered by Volgin.
You'd better start talking.
Please, stop this!
I guess he's dead.
The sound design alone in this scene just makes it all really visceral and uncomfortable. Furthermore, the controller vibrates as he's torturing us, so, you know, immersion.
Let's get started. What is your target? Is it the Shagohod?
We then finally see the torture room, and we see Snake bag over head being tortured by Volgin, with Ocelot, a disguised Eva, and the boss all being present. Volgin also thinks we're here for that Philosopher's Legacy thing.
Your real target is the Philosopher's Legacy, isn't it?
Of course, though, we still don't know what this thing is at all. But Eva and the boss seem really interested. Very suspicious. Which is good for her, because Volgin just starts conveniently explaining what it is to us. And it turns out the Philosopher's Legacy is a shit ton of money. Money accumulated by 3 great powers, whoever those are.
$100 billion, divided up and hidden all over the world. The secret fund established by the 3 great powers during the 2 world wars. That's what you're looking for, isn't it?
This, of course, means it would be a really smart idea for Volgin to just tell us where it is.
Philosopher's Legacy is safely in my possession, in the underground vault of Groznygrad.
And right next to it is 1629. But then, suddenly, a transmitter comes out of Snake. A transmitter the boss claims she planted. This causes Volgin to get a little suspicious.
I'm afraid I must ask you to show me some proof that you and he were not in collusion.
You don't trust me, is that it?
Not that. But he is your apprentice.
So, to prove that she isn't in on this at all, and to further establish that Volgin is, you know, a violent, crazy, evil dude, he gives the boss some instructions.
Cut out his eyes. I don't like those blue eyes of his.
This is, of course, something the boss is visibly reluctant to do. She still, however, goes through with it, removing her knife and removing Snake's blinds. The knife getting closer and closer to Snake's first eye. Snake begins to panic as the knife is nearly a fingertip away until...
Stop!
Eva, or Tatiana, attempts to stop the whole thing. This causes Revolver Ocelot to get ultra suspicious. He then sniffs her, trust me, there's context, and realizes this woman is Eva.
That smell. You're the spy.
He then reloads his revolvers and starts juggling again. Trust me, I promise you, it's really intense. Snake, however, then saves her, only for the bullet to graze his eye.
Embarrassing.
Man, all this to explain the Metal Gear Solid 5 cover? I gotta say though, the brief misdirection with you thinking the boss is going to do it is really brilliant. It's an overall just really well executed scene. And yeah, there's not much else to say. It's really good. Anyways, Vulcan and Ocelot leave, but for some reason the boss stays behind, shooting us in the leg but then hiding the revolver in our belt. Clearly something deeper is going on here.
Run!
The boss then leaves, allowing Eva to reveal to us that she has an escape plan. But to get there, we gotta go through the sewers. But to get there, we gotta break out of prison first. So it's just like Metal Gear Solid 1. Complete with yet another fucking moron guard who has diarrhea. Now, there are a lot of ways to break out of this prison cell, but my favorite is opening up the main menu and spinning Snake around a bunch of times, which will cause him to get motion sick and throw up, causing the guard to check on you. Which is, of course, the perfect opening to beat him up. But of course, by doing so, you'll be missing crucial lore information. For example, throwing food back to the guard will trigger a secret cutscene you can miss, where it reveals that this guy is, in fact, the dad of the guard you eventually meet in Metal Gear Solid 1. And all the dudes in the family tree are named Johnny.
All the firstborn sons in my family are called Johnny. My dad's a Johnny, and my son's son will probably be a Johnny too.
The whole clan of Johnnies.
And another thing, in the original PS2 version, you can save your game and quit here, where it'll be established that Snake is afraid of Dracula. And loading back in will trigger an entire hack and slash minigame, which has literally nothing to do with Metal Gear whatsoever. This is here because this was sadly removed from the HD and Master Collection versions. Still though, this is insane to put in your video game.
I'm sorry, Snake. I didn't know you were that sensitive to it. I mean, who'd have thought Sorry, that just slipped out, I swear.
Long story short, we do break out of here and escape to the sewers, until Snake is stopped by a long drop, which suddenly allows Ocelot to catch up with us, to which he plans to kill us by shooting us with his bullet chain. That's actually really fucking hard. So Snake resorts to his last option. He has to jump. We awaken in a burning forest, where suddenly it begins to rain, and we encounter a mysterious figure emerging from the water.
Are you one of the Cobras?
Sad. So sad.
This person is, of course, that ghost guy we've seen floating around the game. Now, this might sound really stupid, even by Metal Gear standards, as Metal Gear is now acknowledging that there's an afterlife in this universe. That is until we experience what is arguably the most disturbing part of the game, which is the boss fight against the Sorrow.
I am the Sorrow. Like you, I too am filled with sadness. This world is one of sadness. Battle brings death. Death brings sorrow. The living may not hear them, but make no mistake. The dead are not silent. Now you will know the sorrow of those whose lives you have ended.
So this boss fight is pretty simple. You walk down a really long, straightforward river, avoiding the ghosts of enemies who drain your health bar, as well as the Sorrow's jump scare attack. However, though, the real creepy part is that the game's been watching you the entire time, because the ghosts of the enemies aren't just random ghosts. No, these are the people you've killed in the game. Yeah, every NPC and even animal you've been killing, the game's been counting it. And as a result, as your body count goes up, so does the boss's difficulty. It's, for one thing, the ultimate extension of Metal Gear Solid's critique of violence as entertainment, but this time applying that to real hard actions you commit throughout the game. And for another, it forces you to humanize your enemies, something that, with its anti-war themes, the game has been actively exploring. No matter what perspective or country you're from, being a tool of war doesn't stop a human being from being a human being. A human being with a life and story of his own, or at least the potential of one.
Why do we have a Cold War anyway? Our two countries used to be such good friends.
Yeah, I hear ya.
I just want to see my family again.
So it's essentially the longer version of that one webcomic that made everyone cry. It's such an effective way of the game telling you that, you know, killing is bad. Top this off with a dreary, creepy, and gloomy atmosphere, and this is one unforgettable moment. And funny enough, this isn't really even a fight. It's just walking down a straight river and touching a dead body at the end. But of course, difficulty isn't the point. It's the atmosphere. It's the narrative. And it's what this moment means for the rest of the game that makes it stand out. It's a creepy yet incredibly effective moment in the game, and one that absolutely shakes things up from here on out. Speaking of which, let's take the revive pill and move on with the game. I recorded this segment like 15 million times and it probably still sucks. Who gives a shit?
Boss, you have to shoot me.
I can't.
So we hear the voices of the Sorrow and the boss as Snake is drifting through the water. Snake then wakes up and washes up back on shore. He then calls his codec crew about the Sorrow, who we discover used to be a psychic medium.
In other words, he could talk to ghosts.
Yeah, again, officially, I'm not hyperbolizing here. However, it turns out after the end of World War II, he defected back to the Soviet Union. However, during a secret mission, the boss ended up killing him.
The boss killed the Sorrow herself and accomplished her mission. At least, that's what the records say.
Well, goddamn, that's crazy. But anyways, we gotta get back to the mission now. Thankfully, though, Eva is indeed nearby and behind a nearby waterfall. So we arrive as Eva motorcycles her way inside.
Eva, you could use a towel.
So could you.
His bitch got a gat, I hit her with ribs. His bitch got a gat, I hit her with ribs. His bitch got a gat, I hit her with ribs. His bitch got a gat, I hit her with ribs.
Cut to Snake eating snakes. Damn, he's fucking that shit up. He's then approached by a half-naked Eva, and the two of them get a little...
His bitch got a gat.
Want some?
No thanks.
Don't like snakes?
Not for dinner.
Can't even eat a snake during a mission, huh?
I wouldn't mind eating you.
Sex. With that being said, there's plenty of great chemistry and bonding here. From Eva's time in the KGB to just randomly talking about sushi.
How about sushi?
Sushi?
Snake then begins to process the fact that he lost his eye, all with the re-emergence of the Snake Eater theme. This is when Eva fully leans into Snake.
Thank you, Snake. I'll be your eyes from now on.
Which is where the game's dramatic cinematic kiss finally happens.
Thank you, Snake.
Except Snake pushes Eva away, with there being way too much on his mind at the moment.
Don't worry about it.
Are you alright?
Now, once again, the chemistry between Snake and Eva should be praised. The scene where these two kiss is very overdramatic, and you know what? That's a good thing. It emulates the Hollywood camp in a way that feels absolutely cathartic. But of course, the game deconstructs it. If a scene like this were in a Hollywood production, again, think of James Bond, it'd be real easy to just fade to black and imply something naughty happened. So it's again really weird seeing a character as macho as Snake straight up reject Eva. As we explored earlier, this adds so much depth to the actual characters, which puts this game multiple cuts above the old school James Bond it's inspired by, inverting the male power fantasy in a very interesting way. Except fuck that though, because we now get the goofiest sex scene ever. So there's a transmitter in your body that someone planted, and if you don't remove it, you get another secret cutscene where Eva removes it in one big Austin Powers styled innuendo.
Can you snap me a beer?
Like, calling this a sex scene is the biggest stretch of all time when this is the sex. And believe it or not, this scene is still emasculating Snake. Like, for a good majority of it, Eva's just crushing Snake's balls and shit. So even in this stupid fucking scene, the James Bond shit is being, like, toyed around with. Especially because James Bond would never allude to the main character's dick being small.
I can't believe how small it is.
Yeah, but it gets the job done.
I got a small dick.
But it gets the job done.
She gonna be like, damn, shit, my God.
Anyways, Eva has C3 for us, so we'll go back into Groznygrad and plant them on some fuel tanks. That is until...
Snake!
We run into Volgan, Ocelot, and an unconscious Eva. Oh, and one other person too.
Why'd you come back?
So the boss comes out and beats the shit out of Snake, in a fight that's once again incredibly choreographed. But yeah, Snake gets beat the shit up.
You got knocked the fuck out!
Causing him to get held up at gunpoint. Which means, of course, we're at the things are now going wrong part of the story. Where for one thing, Eva's cover is officially blown.
It was the smell that gave her away. No, not the perfume. It was gasoline.
You see, I told you there was contact. We also see Volgin beat up a barely conscious Eva, which is, you know, not a very nice thing to do.
The more I learn about that guy, the more I don't care for him.
Turns out, though, Eva took something from Volgin's underground vault. That thing being the small little microfilm. A microfilm containing the location of
the Philosopher's Legacy.
Fuck.
This microfilm contains all the information regarding the legacy. You might say that this film itself is the Philosopher's Legacy.
So Snake finally asks, what is the Philosopher's Legacy?
What is the Philosopher's Legacy?
This, of course, means the classic Kojima exposition dump.
Very well. I'll explain it before I kill you.
So yeah, this is the big key to getting a shit ton of secret money.
Hater.
But not just anybody's secret money, but the secret money of the most powerful people in America, Russia, and China. Money that's, of course, meant for extreme military research.
The atomic bomb, rocket technology, the Cobra unit, and they amassed an enormous sum of money to fund these projects. Enough to fight the war 5 times over. That wealth is the Philosopher's Legacy.
However, what was supposed to be equally divided up money ended up pissing off Russia, who wanted, of course, all the money.
But our great motherland has far surpassed its pathetic rivals.
So one of the organizers, Volgin's dad, did a little money laundering, and divided the money into banks all over the world so Russia could have it all. Eventually, however, Volgin found out and went, God damn, I need that money.
This microfilm contains a record of all those transactions. After my father's death, I learned of this secret and obtained the microfilm.
Volgin then convinced the boss to his side, something that we, of course, experienced firsthand, and thus ends Volgin's yap sesh. He then hands the microfilm over to the boss, who takes Eva away, but also
leave everything to me.
You don't find that suspicious?
But now it's time for our final showdown, which Ocelot really wants for himself.
Let me face him.
Except Volgin tells him to fuck off, basically. So Ocelot pouts like a little bitch and watches from the sidelines. Meanwhile, though, the floor beneath us lowers, and Volgin electro burns his clothes off, initiating our final battle.
It's just you and me now. And I'm gonna enjoy this.
Now, this boss is one of the toughest in the game. That is, if you don't use your Rykov mask, making him tremble thinking you're Rykov, allowing you to plant a bunch of TNT around him, meaning you can finish Volgin quickly by blowing the shit out of him. However, suddenly, Ocelot turns on Volgin, all because he's petty about not fighting Snake. He then just kinda leaves, leaving us with the second Volgin phase, which again, we can just breeze through by taking the fake death pill and planting more TNT around him. By the way, yes, as you can tell, a lot of these bosses just have massive kill switches, which sure you can argue trivializes the bosses, yada yada yada. With that being said, these methods are a godsend on a second playthrough. I also find finding the kill switch to be just as rewarding as beating the boss on its own. It's an example of emergent gameplay, which I love that shit. I honestly really wish more games had shit like this, because the only games I can think of that do have it are Deus Ex and maybe like the Resident Evil 4 remake.
I will have to kill you myself.
So now that we beat the big bad guy of the game, we gotta get out of here before our bombs blow up. And thankfully, Eva picks us up in her motorcycle. And perfect timing as Grozny Crowd blows the fuck up. Snake then asks Eva how she got out, to where she reveals it was indeed the boss.
Eva, how did you?
The boss let me go.
The boss? But why?
Which reminds him, oh yeah, I gotta kill my bomb figure. But then Eva reveals the boss has already escaped and is already waiting for Snake.
The boss is already at the lake.
Huh?
She's at the lake. She's waiting for you there.
Eva then holds Snake and tells him she doesn't want him to fight the boss. And there's a very interesting reason why. Eva finally realizes the very special bond Snake and the boss have.
I was hoping I wouldn't have to tell you. I don't want you to fight her. I've come to realize that there's a special relationship between you two. Something I can't understand, something that goes beyond a man and a woman.
This, on top of being just very strong character development, is yet another part of the game's whole James Bond deconstruction. You have a character who, by all means, is the sexualized femme fatale, who in a previous scene kinda laughed off the idea of Snake and the boss being in a platonic relationship that ironically is much, much deeper than a romantic one. If we look at Eva as this sexualized symbol of the Bond girl, this is a case where she acknowledges that love can go way deeper than she understands.
I envy you. Really, I do. But I guess I just can't understand it.
It's taking what would normally be a one-dimensional relationship in a Bond film and actively giving it depth and commentary. It's showing you that there is a very real difference between one-dimensional lust and real actual love. It's also just a brilliant way of giving Eva depth, where the more sexual lust is more so the only kind of love she truly understands, and actively plays a big part into her character and the development of it. It is easy for people to just look at Eva and go, oh yes, sexualized gooner woman for the gooner gamers. But instead of making Eva an equally uninteresting, one-dimensional, strong, independent woman who don't need no man, Kojima actively saw a trope in the genre he was paying tribute to and decided to explore and build upon and deconstruct it, both in Eva's character herself and in Snake and Eva's dynamic. She also crushes his balls at some point, and you know what? Fucking base! You know what's unbased though? A giant nuclear tank coming out of the wall, complete with Metal Gear Solid 1 quotes. And on that note, it's time for a big old Metal Gear Solid 1 style chase scene. Only this time much longer and way more over the top. Interspliced with these crazy, insane cutscenes, where it's also revealed that Ocelot is tailing us. So yeah, everything is up to 11 in this scene. Compared to Metal Gear Solid 1, the exhilaration is up to like a 12 here. But TLDR, we blow up this giant bridge, the Shagohod goes down with it.
It's over.
Look!
Except it isn't. No, Volgin somehow propels this giant tank in the air and is able to Tokyo drift with it. So now it's Shagohod boss time, complete with rocket launchers and everything. This is already super over the top and it's only the first phase. And no, you did not hear me stutter on that one. Because Volgin then comes out, grabs some of the Shagohod's electrical wires, and just starts controlling it Ratatouille style. Hey, you know what though? It is exciting and climactic. Gotta say, good final boss. I'm feeling a 10 on this thing. But then, conveniently, a thunderstorm happens. And we're reminded that Volgin is kind of a fucking idiot.
Who's afraid of a little thunder?
So he powers up his electric powers during a thunderstorm.
Fried by a bolt of lightning. A fitting end.
Snake and Eva then hug each other, but the chase somehow still isn't over yet. Yes, that's right, there's even more of this. Bad news though, our fuel starts leaking and we crash the wind. Thankfully nobody's killed, but Eva's badly injured. She can still walk though, meaning escort mission. Yeah, it is an escort mission. I don't love it either. But thankfully we do make it right to the lake, which is right next to a convenient getaway aircraft. Except of course we can't leave yet.
It's the boss, isn't it? I'll leave you two alone. But come back in one piece, okay?
Knowing what he has to do for the mission, Snake reaches a field of beautiful white flowers until...
Life's end. Isn't it beautiful?
Standing right behind us is the boss. Now, up until this point, MGS3 has been very action-focused, and while there were things to analyze, we had to quickly brush them off for the next scene. This is, among other things, the game's very effective subtlety, because the final moments of MGS3 is where the game reveals what's really about.
It's almost tragic. When life ends, it gives off a final lingering aroma. Light is but a farewell gift from the darkness to those on their way to die.
So we begin with a massive introduction from the boss herself, establishing how long she's been waiting for this.
You know how long I've been waiting for this?
I've been waiting, Snake, for a long time. Waiting for your birth, your growth, and the finality of today.
Snake then asks why the boss defected, and at long last we finally get our answer. That answer being to reunite the world.
Boss. Why are you doing this?
Why? To make the world one again. The world used to be whole. But with the end of the Second World War, the philosophers began to fight amongst themselves, and the world was torn apart.
Speaking of the philosophers, by the way, we finally find out who they are, or rather, who they'd eventually become. But before that, though, the boss gets a little more personal, expressing that the Cobra unit was also split up too.
The Cobras, my comrades who trained and fought alongside me, were torn apart as well.
This all caused the boss to realize something. That politics, morality, the things we view as good and evil, these are things that are not absolute. And yet, ironically, these are things that break nations apart. These are reasons that countries commit human tragedies over ideological things that in 30 years could be completely different.
The foibles of politics and a march of time can turn friends into enemies just as easily as the wind changes. Ridiculous, isn't it? Yesterday's ally becomes today's opposition. And this Cold War? Think back. When I was leading the Cobras, America and Russia were fighting together. Now, consider whether America and Russia will still be enemies in the 21st century. Somehow I doubt it.
This is further at the cost of real human life, including those of human soldiers, who are, as explored earlier, just tools of war for bigger people. However, the boss is someone who realized this is kind of a really fucked up thing, and in the greater scheme of the universe makes little to no sense.
Enemies change along with the times, the flow of the ages, and we soldiers are forced to play along. A soldier's skills aren't meant to be used to hurt friends.
This leads to the boss asking Snake what an enemy truly is, and explaining why she believes there is no such thing as an absolute enemy.
So then what is an enemy? Is there such a thing as an absolute timeless enemy? There is no such thing, and never has been. And the reason is that our enemies are human beings like us.
And this is something that we have slowly and subtly but surely seen. From building a personal connection with characters like Eva or even Johnny, or seeing how the Fury or Sokolov are just used as tools of war. Or how about when we spent the whole game killing all those enemy soldiers, but then we're confronted by the fact we killed human beings during the Sorrow boss fight. And all for what? Our country? The mission? The boss, however, understands this idea better than anyone else. And as she dives into her own backstory, we discover why very quickly. From the flashback of her killing the Sorrow, you already have some of an idea of what she's been through. Something she goes much deeper into in this scene. For one thing, she's now completely sterilized due to radiation. The first time from being involved with Nevada's nuclear bomb test sites. And the second from being secretly shot into space, just so America could rush some data to get the leg up on Soviet Russia.
At the time, they didn't have the technology to block out cosmic rays, and whoever they sent up would inevitably be exposed to heavy radiation. That's why they chose me. After all, I'd already been irradiated once. Of course, you won't find any of this in the history books.
On top of that, she was involved with the Bay of Pigs incident, which, if you know anything about history, then yeah, you would feel fucked over after the Bay of Pigs incident.
Our weak-kneed president held back their air support. Defenseless, the exiles were annihilated by the Cuban army. All I could do was watch in silence. I was set up by the very country I'd sacrificed so much for. By the very government I dedicated my life to defending.
This all leads to the boss's revelation. Conflicts, borders, nations, they're all man-made concepts. And the Cold War is just a way for two giant countries to race to the same conclusion.
The United States and the Soviet Union are spending billions on their space programs and the missile race, only to arrive at the same conclusion. In the 21st century, everyone will be able to see that we are all just inhabitants of a little celestial body called Earth.
The boss then discusses the philosophers, who, if you couldn't tell by now, are just the Patriots. This is proven by the fact they're both also known as the Wise Men's Committee.
Early in the 20th century, the true holders of power in the United States, the Republic of China, and the newly formed Soviet Union gathered together in a secret meeting that would later be known as the Wise Men's Committee.
No one knows who the Patriots really are. All I've been told is that every key decision is made by a group of 12 men, known as the Wise Men's Committee.
So the philosophers are essentially the proto-patriots. They also used to be comprised of America, Russia, and China. That is until, as Volgan expressed earlier, all the countries wanted their own power to themselves. This very nature of the philosophers is what made the boss even more disillusioned. As the philosophers are human beings, absolute power corrupted them, only for members to die and other corrupted people to take their place. Eventually, they become their own metaphor for the cycle of war and violence. The boss knows this firsthand as she's the daughter of one of the members, and when her dad tried telling the truth to her, he ended up getting assassinated.
The philosophers of today have no sense of good or evil. Their influence extends to countries and organizations involved in every aspect of every war. They have become war itself. The sacrifices of war cause a shift in the times. This shift leads to renewed conflict and in turn triggers the next war. Do you understand what I'm saying, Snake? By consuming me and you, the philosophers intend to keep that cycle going forever.
What's even more sad, though, is when the philosophers took away the boss's lover and child. You see, turns out the Sorrow and the boss were in love. However, during the Battle of Normandy, the boss was pregnant with the Sorrow's child, but the boss ended up having to give birth on the battlefield. And not just that, but she had to give herself a C-section in the middle of a gunfight, only for her child to be taken away by the philosophers. And even worse, 20 years later, with her lover, the Sorrow, already back in the Soviet Union, she was sent on a mission to kill him, which reluctantly she did. Betrayed and used by her own country, she lost her child and her lover, something we're shown physically as we return to the field.
Look at this scar. This is proof that I was once a mother.
We're shown firsthand this large snake-like scar all along the front of her body, which first off is a very powerful non-sexual contrast towards Eva. In fact, the boss is almost the exact opposite of a Bond girl to the point where it could be considered intentional. But secondly, on that note, the boss is an incredibly empowering character. She is completely capable of fighting on her own, but is also given a really powerful tragedy. You truly understand the reasons why she's disillusioned and jaded. And in a game where this character is mostly mysterious and kind of in the background, having a scene where she just dumps her humanity onto you is so bittersweet.
I gave up my body and my child for my country. There is nothing left inside me now. Nothing at all. No hatred, not even regret. And yet sometimes at night, I can still feel the pain creeping up inside me, slithering through my body like a snake.
This entire scene is weirdly intimate, and it really works. And you can't help but feel at least a little bit of something as she tears up, thanking Snake for listening to her.
I've never talked this much about myself before. Thanks. Thanks for listening to me. I feel content.
This entire speech is one of the greatest in any medium ever. And if I can be honest, this entire segment I can't do justice. I'll let the rest play out, but this really is something you have to experience yourself, as this super intimate moment is really made better by the fact this is your journey, and the fact that we now have to kill this tragic mother figure of ours.
I raised you. I loved you. I've given you weapons, taught you techniques, endowed you with knowledge. There is nothing more for me to give you. All that's left for you to take is my life, by your own hand. The one who survives will inherit the title of boss. And the one who inherits the title of boss will face an existence of endless battle. I'll give you 10 minutes. In 10 minutes, Miggs will come and bomb the hell out of this place. Let's make this the greatest 10 minutes of our lives, Jack.
Boss.
You're a soldier. Finish your mission. Prove your loyalty. Face me.
And thus begins the final boss fight, and it's easily the hardest one, requiring a lot of sneaking around. It's almost a cat and mouse game. You gotta damage her before she spots you and then go and run around and hide from her again. But what's really striking is the atmosphere, the white flowers and everything, and the lack of music, just the breeze of the wind. Except, wait, do you hear that? Yeah, emerging from the background, the Snake Eater theme begins to play, going from the instrumental track and building up to the vocal track, which hits really hard for you once you realize that Snake Eater is about the boss.
I'm searching and I'll melt into you.
The one who survives will inherit the title of boss.
I give my life, not for honor, but for you.
I gave up my body and my child for my country. There is nothing left inside me now.
In my time,
one must die, and one must live. No victory, no defeat.
Crime, it's the way I fly to you.
I've been waiting, Snake, for a long time. Waiting for your birth, your growth, and the finality of today.
Snake Eater isn't just a James Bond theme. No, it's the boss's internal thoughts during this whole fight. And this recontextualization is so narratively brilliant, further playing on your expectations of James Bond, making a song with so much more gravity than just watch out, James Bond. And you don't realize this until it starts playing at the end during this boss fight. It's a song about a woman who knows she might have to die, if that means convincing her son-like protege to make the world better in the future. And on top of knowing she's lost pretty much everything, it makes the boss really, really tragic as a character. And during the fight, you actually feel kind of bad for fighting her in the first place. But with all this development, it sadly means we have to now kill the boss. But first, she gives us that little microfilm, the one with all the access to the Philosopher's Legacy, as well as the gun she fought us with.
A patriot? Why are you giving me this?
Which is where the boss instructs us to kill her.
You're a wonderful man. Kill me. Kill me now. Do it.
So we stand back up and aim at the defenseless boss.
There's only room for one boss and one snake.
In a sequence where we have to press the button to shoot her. There's no press X to shoot or anything, by the way. You're meant to stand there for a minute, which is a great interactive reflection of Snake's reluctancy, and really nails in the fact that it's you who pulled the final shot. Snake begins to process everything that's happening to him. As he does, the flowers in the field turn from white to red. Now, right here, I'm gonna pause and talk about something. And that's what Metal Gear Solid 3 is ultimately about. That being the ideas of disillusionment and the loss of innocence. This, of course, makes sense as you play as a guy who would eventually become a war criminal. But the game does a great job using interactivity and acknowledging you, the player, as a way of putting you in his shoes. I mean, for one thing, think of the symbolism behind the Cobra unit. And think of that in the context of the presumably male dude bro gamer. Someone who did not learn anything from MGS2 and wants to be a stealth badass. It really is not too different from someone who likes James Bond and who likes seeing the ideal man get the girl and kick some ass. As well as, like MGS2 tackles, escape from their own problems, projecting those feelings onto fictional characters and worlds.
Sounds like the Cobra Unit's members' names came from the specific emotions they each carry into battle.
Emotions.
It's not too unlike how Snake has to fight the pain of how he feels about the boss. And by pure coincidence, the first boss you fight and kill is the pain.
For unbearable torment, the pain.
But then there's still a fear of pain that lingers on afterwards. So after that, you gotta kill the fear.
For absolute terror, the fear.
But then, after you've killed your pain and the fear of said pain, there's still the fear of death and the way you process it.
For true oblivion, the end.
But ironically, at this point, a large part of you has now presumably died. And as part of the grieving process, you have to fight your anger next.
For infinite rage, the fury.
And once you've killed the fury, there's not a lot of emotions you have left after that. You feel regret, depression, and sorrow. And like the boss itself and the NPCs you kill throughout the game making the boss harder, the more guilt you have and feel, the harder it is to fight the sorrow. This all, of course, is a reflection of Big Boss's character arc. He has to kill the pain of the boss betraying him, the fear of losing the boss, someone who's deeply close to him, and he has to grow numb and kill his feelings towards death or the end. He then, of course, has to kill the fury, his anger towards the boss, as well as his anger towards the countries that made him fight in the first place, realizing that every country is fighting for dominance at the expense of real human life. He then has to go through the sorrow of realizing he's part of the problem, killing people for a country that merely view him as a war tool. And finally, both you and Snake arrive at the same conclusion. As both you and Snake have mythologically killed your innocence, you're no longer pure or clean, represented by the white flowers turning into red ones. Now, interestingly, when it comes to the color white representing purity, normally the opposite of that is black, meaning impurity. However, the flowers don't turn black, they turn red, blood red. A color both symbolizing violent aggression and love, meaning that no matter how hard it was or how hard it may be, you both have to kill the one thing you have left, and that's the boss. Which, by the way, isn't her official Cobra unit name. No, her original Cobra unit name is, and your mind's gonna be blown by this.
And for unsurpassed bliss, the joy.
But fuck that though, we gotta get our waifu Biddy now. So in spite of, you know, being still shaken up, we still gotta get home and score the girl, right? Except one issue. Snake! Yep, bad news, Ocelot is here. Ready to jump on plane and take us down. Damn! Yeah! So we watch two big burly men wrestle on a plane. Just don't let an archive of our own see this one though.
Ocelot, what are you doing?
Finishing what I started.
I mean, it can't be that bad.
But then, long story short, the two propose a revolver duel, while also revealing their real names.
You're not a snake, and I'm not an ocelot. We're men with names. My name is Adamska. What's yours?
John.
Plain name. But I won't forget it.
But turns out the one single bullet happens to be a blank. So at this point, he's just fucking with him, I guess. Wow, Adamska, that's really romantic of you, dude.
Till we meet again, John.
After a couple more dramatic plane moments because this game wasn't action-oriented enough, Snake and Eva finally make it in the air and are on their way home.
Well done, Snake.
Congratulations.
And all my boys with that male power fantasy knows what that means. A little bit of wine, a little careful. Oh yes, my favorite meal, spoiled misogyny and Lucky Charms.
Oh, delectable.
But hey, the mission's over and we got the girl, right? Except, no. No he didn't. This is where Metal Gear Solid 3's final reveal comes in. The full, unadulterated truth. After killing the entire Cobra unit, losing his innocence, and killing his mother figure, the only thing Snake has left is Eva. But instead of Snake and Eva cheekily fading to black and riding off into the sunset, we fade into the very next morning. Eva's gone, and we hear a monologue from her, beginning with a Book of Genesis reference.
Scholars tell us that the first spy in history was the snake in the Book of Genesis. In that story, it was Eve who was tempted by the snake in the Garden of Eden. But this time around, it was I who tempted the snake and got away with the forbidden fruit of knowledge.
No fucking way.
Snake then finds a nearby audio tape and player, and on it is a message from Eva.
Good morning, Snake. I hope you slept well.
So it turns out Eva wasn't a KGB spy at all. In fact, she wasn't anything she said she was. In reality, she was a spy for China.
I'm not a KGB spy, and I never worked for the NSA. I'm an agent of the People's Republic of China for the General HQ 2nd Department of the People's Liberation Army.
Her mission was to get the Philosopher's Legacy for the Chinese branch of the Philosophers. And conveniently, neither the real Adam or Eva showed up to the meeting place, allowing her to blend right in. So now, Eva and China have the Philosopher's Legacy and the Shagohod data. And Eva had Snake hook, line, and sinker. Eva objectifying herself and pursuing Snake was merely a ploy to manipulate him. And you know, I get it. This is part of the James Bond deconstruction. I won't deny, the deconstructed Bond girl turning out to be a femme fatale, it's a smart plot twist. But you know what? After all the disillusionment, after killing the boss and everything, and especially after seeing all the real, honest-to-God chemistry Snake and Eva actually have, this does something even more important. It really fucking hurts. And you can tell it's hurting Snake too.
It was all a lie. I tricked you. And I'm sorry.
And you bet your ass this is a political statement. And in fact, it's the exact point the boss was making. At the beginning of the game, she directly tells you not to have feelings for your comrades.
Listen to me, Jack. Just because soldiers are on the same side right now doesn't mean they always will be. Having personal feelings about your comrades is one of the worst sins you can commit.
And then at the end explains that as a result of being pawns of war, soldiers have no choice but to hurt their friends.
I didn't raise you and shape you into the man you are today just so we could face each other in battle. A soldier's skills aren't meant to be used to hurt friends.
All in the name of meaningless historical competition. Eva, for the sake of her country, emotionally used Snake to get information out of him, then just tossed him away. And fuck man, when they're done with Eva, who knows what they'll do with her? The boss knows this feeling well. She lost her lover, and she lost her child. And more importantly, she knows this because she didn't actually defect. Yeah, that's right, the plot twists aren't over yet. So it turns out the one person Eva couldn't fool was the boss, who back in Groznygrad told Eva the whole truth. A truth so important that it stops Eva from killing us.
In other words, I'm supposed to kill you. But I can't do it. Not because we loved each other. And not because you saved my life. But because I made a promise to the boss. And I intend to keep it.
We then cut to Snake walking to the Oval Office as we hear the real truth.
Snake, listen to me. She didn't betray the United States. No. Far from it. She was a hero who died for her country. She carried out her mission knowing full well what was going to happen.
We see Fox, our Kodak crew, Sigint, paramedic, Major Zero, and at the end of the room, President Lyndon B. Johnson, who awards us the title of a Big Boss.
You are above even the boss. I hereby award you the title of Big Boss.
But of course, note Snake's reaction. When he walks in the room, he's completely emotionally cold, and for the whole duration, he's just so out of it. He's reluctant to shake the president's hand. He straight up avoids shaking the hand of the CIA directors. This man is just a walking corpse at this point. But of course, the US government doesn't give a single shit about that.
You know, we could use an infiltration unit like Fox in the army. Someone like him to handle our top secret sneaking missions for us. A man who combines the qualities of a soldier and an agent.
Which, by the way, yes, is foreshadowing Solid and Liquid Snake, further establishing just how soulless Snake and Liquid were created. We then hear Eva's speech continued, and somehow the reveals make things worse.
The boss's defection was a ruse set up by the US government.
The boss didn't defect to Russia. She was yet another spy, this time American, trying to get the Philosopher's Legacy. But then, of course, Volgin fired a nuke at a Russian facility. So, to prevent World War III from happening, America had to kill the boss and make her look like a terrorist who defected. And who better to send than you, the one person who's trained under her? She was true on her word when she said loyalty to the end. She was loyal to America. And yet, everything she was saying, it had to be a cry for help, right? No matter what, she was just a tool, ready to be discarded. And in the end, so was Snake. You saw it all firsthand. This man killed all the manifestations of his emotional states. As a result, he lost his innocence, and the one connection he cared about, Eva, was simply using him. And that very woman who used him reveals that his own side is also using him, and forced him to kill his mother figure who had already lost everything for her country. And like the boss before him, he's now completely disillusioned. But now he's gained the title of Big Boss. Except at what cost did he earn that title? Because everything he cared about during the mission is completely lost now. And what's even worse is that now that he's officially killed the boss, she will now be viewed as a historically deplorable figure. Something Eva explains as we walk to the boss's grave, with Snake, now Big Boss, carrying one last tribute to her.
Future generations will revile her. In America as a despicable traitor with no sense of honor. And in Russia as a monster who unleashed a nuclear catastrophe. She will go down in official history as a war criminal. And no one will ever understand her. That was her final mission.
Of course, the boss knew what was going to happen to her, but you were still a tool for the Cold War. You pulled the trigger, so you can't help but feel emotionally conflicted about it all. But at the end, the boss still cared about Snake and wanted him to know the truth.
But I think she wanted you, of all people, to know the truth. She wanted to live on in your memory. Not as a soldier, but as a woman. But she was forbidden to tell you herself.
The game then ends with Big Boss delivering the boss's gun to her grave. Meanwhile, Eva's message ends with her breaking down into tears. The gravity of an innocent woman being reviled by history really hitting her. All the while, Big Boss salutes her grave, barely able to keep himself together. And knowing that this massive event would lead to this man becoming a war criminal, it makes all this hit that much harder. This man was emotionally controlled by everyone. And after helping turn a woman he loved into a historical war criminal, he returns disillusioned. As a result, he would then try and fail to build Outer Heaven multiple times, only to repeat the very history he's fighting against. In order to become Big Boss, Snake has to lose everything, and he would spend the rest of his life never recovered.
Snake. History will never know what she did. No one will ever learn the truth. Her story, her debriefing, will endure only in your heart. Everything she did for her country. She sacrificed her life and her honor for her native land. She was a real hero. She was a true patriot.
And this is the game's final shot, our masculine hero crying at his mother figure's grave. There's no reward, no sunset with the love interest, but rather a man disillusioned by the casualties of war. I can't express enough how strongly I feel about this ending. Recording all this now gives me a massive lump in my throat, and finding the words to describe the impact of the scene is near impossible for me. It's arguably the most depressing ending in the whole series. There are one or two other things that happen after this, like for example a scrolling timeline we get, comprised of events that lead up to the birth of Snake and Liquid. And also, of course, a post-credit scene revealing that not only was Ocelot Adam the whole time, but he was also a triple agent for America who gave Eva a fake version of the Philosopher's Legacy.
Yes. It appears that no one knew that I was Adam. The film we handed the Chinese was a fake. The Philosopher's Legacy is now safely with us, in America's hands.
But what I really want to highlight is a song that plays during the credits of this game. It's a real song called Way to Fall by Star Sailor. Sadly, I can't play the actual song because of copyright. And what you're hearing now is a pretty fantastic cover by Jordan Fox. With that being said, I recommend listening to the original, because it's a fantastic song and fits Metal Gear Solid 3 so well. From its somber and melancholic sound, to its lyrics about a parent telling their child about long-term suffering, it is a perfect reflection of Metal Gear Solid 3's themes, reflecting not just the harrowing effects of the ending, but also the trajectory of Big Boss's character. It is easily one of the best usages of a licensed song ever, and it's the perfect way of capping off this entire experience.
I've got something in my throat. I need to be alone while I
From its incredibly detailed gameplay to its cinematic yet deconstructive story, Metal Gear Solid 3 is an absolute masterwork of fiction. And there is a damn good reason this is considered one of the, if not the best in the franchise. And I know for a fact this video is not gonna do this game justice at all. I know there's like a billion fucking things I've missed about it. Like for example, how it's implied that the son that was taken from the boss is Revolver Ocelot and she doesn't know at all. Or if you eat enough bad food that Snake doesn't like, he will eventually grow accustomed to it and like it. Or how sometimes you can spot the sorrow in certain cutscenes. Or how in the PS2 version, there is an entire extra mode that's a promotion for Ape Escape 3. Or how in the Subsistence version, and only the Subsistence version, there is an entire collection of fucking shitposts. One of my favorites being when the CIA director gets mad that Snake didn't shake his hand, so he just randomly finds him and fights him until they shake hands and get married for whatever reason. This one is almost as good as the one where Raiden from Metal Gear Solid 2 travels back in time to be the main character of the game, only for him to get slapsticked around the whole time like a Tom and Jerry character. But yeah, overall, I think Metal Gear Solid 3 is a pretty neat video game.
This is a work of art.
It's a phenomenal deconstruction of the male James Bond power fantasy. And what is on the surface a very bombastic and cinematic experience is in reality a critique of the Cold War and a harrowing story of disillusionment. With that being said, it was also meant to be the last game in the franchise. In fact, Kojima wanted to end the story as far back as MGS1, where the characters learn not to be tied to genes, but rather the lives they choose to live. But then, of course, that game ended up blowing up in popularity. So, as a result, Metal Gear Solid 2 exists as a weird anti-sequel. A game about a Metal Gear Solid fan character having an existential crisis, but learns to find his own identity. That's where Metal Gear Solid was meant to end. But then, as the game was both insanely successful, but very divisive at the time, Kojima was obligated back into a Metal Gear Solid 3, a game where he finally gives the player that male power fantasy again, only to brutally murder it right in front of them, while at the same time also wrapping the whole series around a full circle. However, due to very extreme fan pressure, some of which involving, believe it or not, real death threats, and no doubt pressure from his publisher Konami, Kojima had to make a Metal Gear Solid 4, a definitive ending for a franchise that wasn't meant to have one. And yet, no matter what his feelings were, Kojima had to finish the story. His solution was an albino monkey.
Buy my game. Let me scan you for my Hideo game.
In close-range combat, a knife can sometimes be more useful than a gun. By doing this, I'll be able to hold a knife at the same time and still keep the gun steady. That way, I can instantly switch between a gun battle and a knife fight.